Now, staying on COP26, the reaction to this historic deal is pouring in. And with that, let's bring in Laura McQuillan. And again, underlining historic, but also it seems a sense of disappointment that so many compromises were made. What are you seeing at this point, Laura?
Yeah, Michael, it's not often you see an international summit end with the participants saying it was deeply disappointing because so many of them were caught off guard by that last-minute change that Don was telling us about on coal power. We heard those voices in the room expressing the fact that they do not like the way the agreement ended, the way these backroom negotiations went on right up until the very final minute before that vote took place. We heard from Liechtenstein, for the greater good, we must swallow this bitter pill. Something that we've kind of heard over and over throughout the day today because this deal, imperfect to many, but they feel that it does move things forward in terms of tackling the climate crisis. So, though it's imperfect, they say that it keeps that 1.5 degrees Celsius commitment alive. We saw criticism in the room from Pacific Island states, from Europe, from Mexico, all criticising the lack of transparency, saying they had been told they couldn't change the text at that late minute, and yet India's proposal went ahead. Just checking Twitter now, seeing that people are saying, still this is a positive. It's the first COP decision that actually mentions coal power or fossil fuel subsidies. We've seen Greenpeace's international head put out a tweet saying that the text is meek, it's weak, and the 1.5 Celsius goal is only just alive, but a signal has been sent that the era of coal is ending, and that matters. So, lukewarm reaction to that part of the deal. Something else that we were speaking about earlier in the day that didn't make the final agreement either is this funding body that those small island nations had been pushing for, by which they would be compensated by developed countries, richer economies, for the damage that climate change is causing to them. Whether that's from rising sea levels or from wildfires, anything that is related to climate change. Now, that didn't make it into the final deal, the criticism being that it was blocked by the EU and the United States. To that point, we heard right in the closing part of COP from Antigua and Barbuda's delegate who was speaking on behalf of the Alliance of Small Island States, putting forth their protest that didn't make it into the final text. And here's what she said.
AOSIS, in the interest of reaching a consensus, will accept the text as gavelled, as it stands, with the clear understanding that this dialogue is a key step towards the creation of a loss and damage finance facility. We firmly believe that the dialogue should lead to a conclusion that the new loss and damage finance facility will be adopted at the next COP. This is the basis on which we understand the decision before us. We request assurances from the COP presidency that this is the interpretation in our acceptance of this decision.
So, Michael, as we heard over and over, they will approve the text for the greater good, but it seems that not many people in the room, and indeed outside of the room, were very happy with how things played out today.
Well, to that, Laura, let me read to you. This is a tweet that's just been sent out by Greta Thunberg, of course, a globally renowned environmental activist, who says the COP26 is over. Here's a brief summary. She says, blah, blah, blah. But she adds to that, but the real work continues outside these halls. And we are hearing that there needs to be work done between now and the next COP. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, the summit has often been labelled a talk fest, including by Greta Thunberg herself. But what we hear from observers is, this is where the talking happens, but the action is what happens next. So these leaders, these envoys will go home and they'll get started on making progress on these steps that they have promised to commit to. Then we have to see, how is that progress measured? How are they held to account on that? We've been speaking with a number of people observing COP26 who've been telling us that same message, including one of Canada's young representatives at the youth events taking place around COP. Here's what she told us.
The very fact that people look at the COP conferences as the end-all and be-all of this road towards climate justice, I think we really need to move away from that, because honestly, the action that, like the changes that happens on the ground, and that has to happen post-COP26 or post any climate change conference, because that is when the policies are implemented. So I think what the talk should really be about now are how we implement what was already discussed at COP26, and then just look at the next COP as a way to reflect on what was done, what wasn't done, what can be learned.
So, Michael, we'll be checking back in a year from now to see what has come of the summit today. But of course, in the hours and days ahead, there's going to be a lot of discussion about what happened in that final minute, especially with that aspect on coal power, and perhaps a lot of countries having a few more conversations about the way that things played out this year and avoiding such a deal coming to a head at the very last minute in future.
Well, certainly we're going to have much more analysis coming up throughout this day and this weekend. That agreement just passed in the last hour. So, Laura, thank you for this. We will speak again.